morning, everyone. I'm John. Good to see you all. This is a very student lecture type room. So I hope everyone found this morning interesting. I think it was a very good macro picture on perhaps the agency and client world when it comes to marketing brands, and particularly obviously focused on the world of experiential and what does experiential really mean. And I think it's fantastic that what we've got today here in this room with us is Shaz Smilansky from
Hello.
a specialist experiential marketing agency. So a lot of the guys this morning were talking more about the world of experiential from a bigger picture perspective, arguably, from a bigger agency, bigger client world perspective, where experiential operates across arguably everything that they do. And I think it's going to be really interesting to hear from a specialist individual and agency about their approach to experiential marketing and perhaps their definition of what it means and how it can really add value to brands. But before I just briefly introduce Shaz in a bit more detail, I just thought I would just provide a little bit of a link from this morning to Shaz's presentation. So, the way that I see experiential is, I think 5-10 years ago, certainly historically, experiential was perhaps considered from a very micro perspective. Most people probably would have considered that word to mean live events and the opportunity to engage with customers from a brand perspective via a live event, and just a live event in its one form. That could obviously be put together in a number of different ways, but obviously 10 years ago there wasn't the opportunity to leverage the value of that type of live event via a multiple of different, particularly digital technologies. So that's obviously been a huge change over the last 5 to 10 years, and we heard a lot about that today, and I think that's why the bigger marketing world and agency world in many ways probably views that everything is experiential these days, and that experiential for a brand and their customers is a critically important component part of everything that they do. And therefore they might argue that it doesn't really sit as a separate discipline today, and that to define experiential marketing as only a live event is not correct and is not the way that they would view things. And I doubt that Shaz would disagree with it either, but it may well have been part of the original purpose of setting up her specialist agency at the time. So I think there is that shift from micro experiential to macro experiential. And I think we heard a lot about that today with Dan from AQ Q&A talking about how stories are really now being brought to life through experiences, and how they use those experiences perhaps to drive innovation, not within their own agency necessarily, but certainly on behalf of their clients. And the experience that you can provide to a customer almost gives you an opportunity to ask for their feedback and input to a lot of different parts of their businesses. So, I think as Wakir was saying from Samsung, actually the way that Samsung views experiential these days is it's a crucial part of their underlying business proposition. It's not just marketing, it's right from A to Z in everything that they do. And I guess to some extent, therefore, we live in an experience economy today. And you need to try and break down what you really mean by experiential marketing. And certainly when you're learning in higher education establishments about experiential marketing, later on in this session, hopefully we can open up for discussion as to what you guys are how you're putting that across to your students. And if you're a student, what do you understand experiential marketing to mean? How are you being taught about it? Is it still in this siloed discipline area, or is it talked about in a much broader way? So I think those were some of the things that we heard about this morning, and as I say, I think it's going to be really interesting to hear Shaz's perspective. Just a very brief introduction to Shaz. She runs an agency called Blazinstar. I believe you're the co-founder of it and is the creative director for Blazinstar. She's a very well recognised leading figure and an expert in that area. She has written a book on the subject. In fact, I think that's the title of your book, or pretty close to it.
Pretty close.
So you should go online and have a look at that, and go into a store and buy a copy. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more, but a shameless plugging there.
Thanks.
But she's also a recognised commentator on the world of experiential, both within trade publications and both online and in print, as well as in the wider media world. So she's very well versed in this whole subject, and I'm sure we'll learn quite a lot from her this morning. And she's going to give a 20-30 minute presentation, talk a little bit about the processes that you can go through to develop fantastically effective experiential campaigns, and give some examples obviously, but after that we'd like to open it up for discussion. So have a think about questions on this subject, whether they be related to earlier in the day or indeed Shaz's specific comments, and hope you enjoy it. Okay?
Thank you. Thanks, John. So thanks very much, everyone, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be part of the EDCOM event. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, if we go over to the next slide. Yeah, so I'm the visiting professor at the London Metropolitan University on the Experiential meets Digital Master's degree, which is something that I helped them develop following on from the success of the book launch back in 2008. That's actually in its second year now, and it's the first master's degree on experiential marketing in the UK. And it really, for us, was quite an important kind of involvement in the educational side, because as an agency at Blazinstar, we're very much advocates of actually raising the profile of experiential marketing, not only as the opportunity to kind of use brand experiences as a live channel, as John said, but the integrated experiential marketing methodology. And it's for that reason that we've really kind of partaken in lots of different educational initiatives, such as the release of the book and the involvement with different universities. So it's very relevant for me to be here today speaking to you as an audience. So I just thought that would be a quite useful bit of background. Blazinstar as an agency, we've been around for 8 years, and we work with leading brands and also media agencies. So that's everyone from kind of Haagen-Dazs, Love Film, the WPP family, where Nick is, and lots of others. So we have a kind of very varied series of sectors in our client portfolio, which gives us a good view in that respect as well. So, as you all know by now, the last 8 years have seen a real shift in terms of experiential marketing, and what does it mean? How is it perceived as well? So previously, 5-10 years ago, you might have had a client marketer sort of going, experimental what? Or not really even understanding the word at all. That went then kind of into a change where the terminology became more familiar to people, on client side, but then, maybe perceived more as experiential equals the live channel. Even something that amongst a lot of agencies that refer to themselves as experiential agencies is a kind of a common misuse of the term. So kind of glorified promotional staffing, tactical sales promotions being defined as, what experiential is. That's really changed, especially over the last 2-3 years. When I wrote the book, which was in 2007 before it was published, I was actually kind of forecasting a shift towards an integrated approach where live brand experiences could be executed either face-to-face or remotely, but that live interactive element that was executed in real time would be forming the core of integrated experiential marketing campaigns. That was prior to T-Mobile, which I know Sue touched upon a lot because of MediaCom's involvement in that, and obviously very high profile, fantastic case study. After T-Mobile, it seemed like they really paved the way for actually creating some fame for the results that you can get, placing a brand experience at the core. And since then, lots of brands have followed suit. So yeah, major brands, are now placing the content, of live brand experiences at the core of their integrated campaigns, often using it as ad creative, whether that be ad creative to drive participation in the experience, but then also, content generated from a live brand experience being used within the ad creative, also across social media platforms. So. Amazing results, as I'm sure lots of the case studies that we'll look at will show, and also some of the examples that you're probably all quite familiar with already. So the integrated experiential marketing methodology, it's a content-driven strategy. It's really all about creating a brand experience that does build that dialogue and engagement piece with the consumer, with the target audience, but it also enables the brand to have something relevant, personally meaningful, kind of authentic and also engaging to then communicate through their broader media. So, as we all know, traditional advertising models really are kind of often perceived as interruptions, bombarding consumers with unwanted messages, while a content-driven approach that's relevant for the consumer is actually something that's an opt-in model. It's something that adds value to that consumer's lives. And channels that are, most suited to, for example, generating awareness, can then be generating awareness about that added value experience that the consumer actually seeks out and wants to know about. So it is a drastic shift, not only in terms of marketing, but also how brands and consumers treat each other from a relationship point of view. It's kind of the evolvement of what may have previously been the relationship marketing era. It's the next level in terms of actually caring for the consumer. So it's a very important shift. So some of the benefits of the live brand experience itself, yes, we will kind of focus quite a lot on integration because of the benefits of doing so, but the brand experience itself can be incredibly valuable. And we still find that today, it's not widely understood across the board what the true benefits can be and how powerful they can be. So it stays front of mind, it's memorable. Through a positive experience, the brand can create a strong, lasting emotional connection. And that's both through multi-sensory stimuli, which are proven to tap into different parts of the brain that actually create long-term recall and trigger emotions, but also through creating something relevant, that emotional connection can be built. Tapping into the 5 senses ignites positive feelings, and live brand experiences are proven to generate word of mouth, which is also fantastic in terms of generating long-term brand advocacy. More and more we see clients, on their all agency tables, in the integrated all agency meetings, talking about how their overall objective, above and beyond maybe some of their more kind of quantitative sales-driven objectives, is to engage their target audience. It's a real buzzword that's obviously been going around for a long time, but advocacy and engagement are top on the list for every brand marketer, and live brand experiences can effectively achieve that. So yeah. So just a few more elements regarding the live brand experiences. So you've got the opportunity to interact with key messages. The key messages can be effectively woven into a brand experience and brought to life through, as AKQA said, the brand story. Building multiple sensory elements and emotional connections can create a long-lasting, genuine connection, a quality interaction. And aligning the 4 key areas of feeling, thinking, being and doing, that is what actually creates that long-lasting emotional impression in the mind, leading to action. So just something I won't dwell on in depth, but I can definitely kind of provide more information about this away from this event, is that live brand experiences are not just face-to-face events. Live brand experiences can, and more we'll see this happening, be executed remotely. So what makes it a live brand experience? Well, it's a two-way interaction between the brand and the consumer, and it's executed in real time. So it's live, it's a live experience, but you could, for example, have 6 town squares around the world, all live streaming content with people at home interacting through their smart TVs, not all in the same room. There's absolutely no reason why you have to stipulate that everybody must be in the same venue or destination. So this is something very interesting, is how will technology influence the focus in terms of whether live brand experiences will continue to primarily be executed in one space.
Do you want to show that video or not?
I don't know if we're going to have time, but yeah, show it.
Click on that. Yep.
So this is a campaign by Lynx, also known as Axe, where they created a live brand experience executed remotely, where consumers via Twitter and other social media platforms had the opportunity to shape characters and become characters, building in plot lines in real time. So as those Twitter feeds came through, the graphic novel artists actually recreated those people into characters and integrated them into the plot. So you can see that going on here. So this was all happening in real time, which is why we would define this as a live brand experience executed remotely.
Over what period of time?
It was a 24-hour kind of one-day event, but kind of not face-to-face. They did also use other broader media support to drive participation, so it was very well integrated as well. So to recap, the live brand experience is personally relevant and meaningful, ignites positive feelings, creates an emotional connection, is memorable, drives word of mouth, and ultimately this all leads to every brand marketer's dream, which is brand advocacy and evangelism. So focusing a little bit more on what is an integrated experiential marketing methodology. So before I go into this, I think it's worth just talking a bit about terminology. The word experiential, as I mentioned, it's often used interchangeably for the live channel. We prefer to call the live experience, if it's an event, the live event or the live brand experience, you know, when it's face to face. The integrated experiential marketing methodology is the application of that live brand experience at the core of the integrated communication plan, and then the utilisation of all those broader channels to amplify it. So the two-way communication is at the core. An interactive, content-driven big idea is then amplified through the broader channels to extend the reach and engage the consumers on a much broader level, and obviously create a cohesive campaign. So that is what we're already starting to see. And you know, the funny thing about it is there are brands who have really been leading the way in this area for many, many years. People like Red Bull with the Flug tag, brands like Disney and Nike. Nike's running events internationally have often been at the core of their integrated marketing campaigns. But since T-Mobile, there's been this real kind of trend, and a lot of the alcohol brands, especially now, are kind of all jumping on board. And we'll show you a few examples of actually some of how TV adverts have been utilised to actually showcase brand experience content and also drive participation in live brand experiences. So different channels like PR, social media and web, outdoor, out-of-home media, traditional media such as TV, on-pack POS and press can all be used to amplify brand experiences. Independently, each of these channels have often, benefited from a collaboration with, an experiential marketing approach. So, for example, many brands still view, live brand experience events as the remit of their PR agency. For example, we work quite closely with Häagen-Dazs, and at General Mills, they see Experiential as the sampling channel, while live brand experience events are PR initiatives. So it's just a matter of the orientation within the organisation, how they perceive things. But PR and live brand experiences have often collaborated, as have social media since the emergence and popularity of Facebook. So it's not that any one of these collaborations is very, very new. It's more that it's the placing of a brand experience right at the core of the full Marcom's plan. That's the big benefit that we'll see brands experiencing. So I'd like to just move on because I think it's pretty much what I've covered. An interesting stat here. So 80% of marketers state that experience-driven activities are highly important within their marketing mix and actually account for a third of their budget. And that's a stat that's about 2 years old now, so it will be interesting to see what new studies show in this area as well. And as I mentioned, I'd like to just showcase some examples of how live brand experiences can give us content for TV ads especially, because obviously that's where we get maximum reach. You've already come across the T-Mobile example, so I'll move on from that one, but obviously it is a very good one. And yeah, that content was used in a 360 amplification approach. And it wasn't just the original flash mob campaign. They also went on to do the karaoke event with Pink in Piccadilly, and future experiences following on from that, bringing to life their Lives for Sharing platform. So it's not just a kind of drop in the water, one-off campaign. It's really a long-term strategy that T-Mobile have seen great successes with.
I'm conscious that we've got a European-wide audience here, or at least I think so, and that is a UK-driven campaign. So do most people in the room, have they seen this actual ad and seen how that came to life?
I haven't seen it, I'm in the UK.
Shall we show it?
Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
Is it,
We'll show it.
is it on here or?
Yeah, if we click on the telly.
As it's been talked about quite a lot today, for those of you who don't know, it's probably worth.
Where's the volume?
It should be on, I think.
No, I turned it down.
Oh,
so I
sorry.
can hear you.
Thanks.
Obviously, the first people to start, I'm sure, were the actors.
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge amount of actors involved, but what T-Mobile actually did as well was they sent out messages and invites to their entire database of customers, to kind of seed participation, and then obviously utilise the content in their media. It's also interesting from the perspective of actually harnessing a cultural trend, which was at that point, really an emerging trend, and using that to own a very relevant cultural property that was, meaningful to the consumer base. Yeah.
Okay,
Now this,
gives you a flavour anyway for anyone who hadn't seen it.
34.5 million, wow, definitely. I've got a lot of reach just on that YouTube video alone. So a content-driven strategy is beneficial because it creates dialogue. It's really important to obviously have that, relevant communication. I mean, a lot of brands, that are kind of jumping on the Facebook bandwagon are just trying to engage consumers in conversations about the product over and over again. And surprisingly enough, actually, a lot of consumers are participating in those conversations. But the benefits of simply saying, what flavour is your favourite today, and how are you going to eat your X, and when do you drive your car? It's just, it's fine, but it's totally incomparable to the benefits that brands who are actually placing engaging content, generated from brand experiences. The benefits there are, hundreds of thousands of times, larger than simple product dialogue. And there is a limit to how many times you can ask the same product-related questions over and over again. So, for those brands that really are seeking to create content, this type of dialogue is much more relevant for the consumer. Creates further reach and ultimately a deeper engagement than a traditional advertising campaign or integrated marketing campaign. Another interesting stat, so 91% of consumers said experiential marketing would encourage them to try a product they would not normally purchase. So obviously that's on the consumer side. More stats here, so 76% of consumers cite a word of mouth as a main influence in purchasing decisions compared to traditional advertising. Consumers who engage in a live brand experience are likely to tell 17 others on average. Now, obviously that's an average stat across many sectors, and that was a stat actually conducted by research that Jack Morton Worldwide compiled. And it's definitely something that's come into a lot of questions. So what we often recommend is, for a brand to do their own research as part of their campaigns to really verify, for your brand and product and for your consumer base, how many, for your experience that you're creating, how many people are going to hear about it. And when it comes to generating excitement about a product, word of mouth has been found to be 10 times more effective than TV or print advertising. I'm sure that's no surprise to you all if you think about your own purchasing behaviour. When do you actually choose, for example, to go to a new restaurant? Is it through an advert in your local paper, or is it a personal recommendation or word of mouth? Similarly with, if you're going abroad, you're going to a new destination, how do you find out what products you want to consume or which destinations you want to visit? Pretty much all purchase decisions do ultimately get driven by personal recommendations. And likewise, advocacy, people who, communicate to their peers, friends, family, colleagues about having had a positive experience with a brand, those positive feelings are then easily transferred to the recipient of that message. Harvard Business Review actually states that the one thing known to drive business growth is word of mouth advocacy. And that's a strong statement from Harvard there. So loyalty, advocacy and evangelism. Loyalty, the multi-sensory experience can evoke an emotional connection, generating loyalty. The generated earned media, so that kind of social media conversation, that word of mouth recommendation can drive advocacy and does. And ultimately that builds a deeper relationship, working towards that ultimate goal, brand evangelism. Brands like Apple have seen enormous success with, placing a consumer experience model at the core of how they do business as a whole, and really seeing this kind of unparalleled level of evangelism. Consumers who buy into the Apple experience will actually opt into hour-long adverts, basically, watching them by choice, and spend up to 15 minutes at a time trying to persuade others to buy into the product. It is ultimately evangelism. It's kind of, you can equate it with the behaviour of a Jehovah's Witness knocking on your door and really, being genuinely that passionate. And that's what a consumer experience strategy can generate. So this paid, owned, shared and earned strategy, it's something that is really very buzzworthy and topical at the moment, and it's it's something that can be applied to many different sectors in marketing. And basically, if we click, it will transform. So the live brand experience and the advertising, the media buys, obviously that's the paid piece. Creating owned media, is your asset. So, a branded property, for example, like Red Bull Flugtag, the affiliated websites and social media platforms, those branded properties are the owned media. And then content is generated through, for sharing through social media and word of mouth communication, ultimately leading to that earned, advocacy piece.
Interesting slide.
So, 93% of marketers said that experiential marketing generate advocacy on word of mouth recommendations. So we can see some really powerful numbers coming through there. And then on to some more examples. First of all, I'd just like to tell you a bit about the Stella Artois Black, the Black Diamond series, which, if we click along, just the next slide. Yeah. Click again. So the out-of-home creative, the PR and press coverage, all amplified the immersive theatre, which was driven by a microsite, and also social media content. So if we actually, if you go to the next slide and we just click on the link in the top left there, the Black Diamond poster. Yeah, then what we can see is a little bit about this fantastic campaign.
July the 4th, 1963. A man is about to give his true love a diamond. Alors, the thief. The man makes a curse. Whoever has this diamond, he says, will be betrayed. They will be alone experience. Third to 21st July, London. Book tickets at stellarartsbyblack.com.
So what they did was they created this series of immersive theatre meet kind of cinematic experience events. And they drove participation online through Facebook and also the website that they created, the kind of microsite platform, where consumers could actually go online and contribute plot ideas, build characters, and influence the outcome of this immersive theatre production. They then filmed the content and broadcasted it again online to actually, reinforce that reach and expand the scope of the exposure to that content. What was also notable was that they used all their out-of-home media to drive participation and awareness in the platform. And it's a very good example of how, despite the fact that, say, only 5,000 tickets, I think it was, were actually available for face-to-face attendance at these, events, the value generated from the content in terms of, the engagement that it offered for the media advertising, and for the actual social media content, was really huge for them. So in terms of, what might have been previously some of the criticisms of a brand, to say, well, I wouldn't want to spend, X of my budget creating an event that reaches 5,000 people. Actually, it's this integrated experiential marketing methodology that makes the investment in the live brand experience channel a very worthwhile move. Also, if we could click on the Smirnoff Nightlife Exchange project. Smirnoff's also a brand that's really dedicated an integrated experiential marketing methodology for quite some time. It's one of their TV ads from end of 2010. So the shipping container that they planted in each of the 50 countries basically offered a kind of vox pop video booth style opportunity for consumers to actually share nightlife ideas and then exchange nightlife concepts through these live brand experience events that they created and then amplified through their broader media. So it's something they've been doing for quite some time, since around 2009, and seen enormous success with. Lots of other alcohol brands have actually followed suit since that. If we look at the Bulmers ad in the bottom right, this is an ad that drove participation in the Experimentals Wanted platform that was kind of a series of experience gigs. And then, how are we doing for time? Have we got a couple more minutes?
One more, probably, yeah.
One more. So, I think it'd be good to look at Rouse's Honey, because this is actually an interesting way where they used their employees to create their first ever TV ad, and then had consumers voting on which of the 6 ads they wanted to be showcased on TV, and this was the one that won. So it was all made by the company's employees.
See their 6 ads and pick which one should become their next TV commercial. Visit facebook.com/RouseHoney. Happy voting. Rouse, House of Honey.
So yeah, that was actually the teaser. But yeah, no, it's a really cool example. And what I'll do is I'll provide a link to this presentation so you can have a browse of some of the other examples in your own time as well. Okay. And just to sum up, it's important to point out that experiential marketing as an integrated methodology is very measurable. The live channel can be measured through a number of metrics, such as opportunities to see in terms of the media value of any production affiliated with it. The number of interactions and engagements can be analysed, and also more detailed qualitative data around that. The length of engagement, the dwell time, the data in terms of the demographics of participation, and obviously data capture mechanics can be integrated very easily into the live channel and then harnessed for future relationship marketing programs, and further communication in CRM. While word of mouth, measurement metrics such as the one integrated by Jack Morton, which shows that each live brand experience participant tells 17 others on average, those kind of studies can be completed to see actually how much word of mouth is truly being generated by a brand experience. And obviously we can then apply statistics, that we're all familiar with in terms of how word of mouth can convert to things like sales, and other types of objective results. And obviously the amplification metrics are in place for the broader media channels because their existing metrics are there, and especially with digital channels you have everything from Facebook analytics, Google, and all the rest of the measurement opportunities that are shared by the media channels. So it's pretty much the sum of all parts in terms of looking at reach and and then trying to analyse specific objectives with tailored bespoke measurement plans. And I think it's just important to touch on even briefly today because it's not a creative, fluffy exercise. It's really about achieving business objectives effectively for brands. So in conclusion, integration is key. Live brand experiences should generate content, and channels should be used to amplify and maximise the reach of those experiences in order to drive word of mouth and advocacy, and that's integrated experiential marketing. So, yeah. I had a few kind of discussion topics, but I don't know if we should maybe just open the floor up for questions.
Yeah. I think just very quickly, just with Shaz's last slide in mind, the one, just go back to that previous one. Just to take it back up a level as well in the context of the wider business world, marketing world, and indeed the way that integrated agencies will think about experiential marketing. As you all know, clients will start by thinking about what's their business vision, their mission, their purpose, what are they trying to achieve, what are they delivering to their customers at their core. And they will obviously use and feed all of that information into their brand values and their brand proposition and how they go about trying to build a brand hierarchy and their underlying marketing strategy. And that is obviously driven to a large extent by really understanding what their customers want and what they can deliver as a company towards them. And therefore what a lot of marketeers and agencies will do is all have a customer journey process. They'll really try and identify what is the customer journey for a particular business or brand. And there will be various different vehicles that you can use in that customer journey via different communication channels to try and leverage or enhance your ability to deliver return on investment or achieve your objectives. And I think if you look at that customer journey, and I'm sure you've all seen various different iterations of that, then I think what many marketers and agencies try to do is work out where do they really want to focus their effort. If they're a massive company, then they might be able to afford to really try and achieve some kind of communication across all of that customer journey. But for many companies, that's not a realistic goal, and you have to work out, are you at a stage of your brand's evolution or product evolution where you are just trying to drive awareness as the key area that you're focusing, and if that is the case, you're more likely to use perhaps more traditional media or media channels that are going to get your brand out there to the maximum amount of people at the lowest possible or most efficient cost. I think there are other brands, perhaps in sexier sectors, arguably, as we've touched on today, where live brand experiences might more naturally allow them to engage with their customers
And I think, in many cases, certainly historically, those have been the types of brands, the sexy brands in many ways that we've talked about today, that have really put live brand experience at their core and perhaps are best placed right now to leverage those experiences with some of the other communication channels. I think what will be interesting over the next 5 to 10 years is to see how many brands, even if they don't have that much money or even if they haven't historically engaged in live brand experiences, really believe that that is a great way of accelerating their mission to get to advocacy and word of mouth. Advocacy really typically is at the end of the customer journey process when you're looking at marketing and communications. It is the holy grail in many ways because it's the way that you're going to continue to get repeat purchase. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. It's also going to be interesting to see how the integrated agency model works with the specialist agency model, whether there's still a seat at the table for both parties, and if so, how do they work together and what do both parties deliver to their clients. And I guess that's also interesting from an education perspective as to how do you therefore talk about experiential marketing to your students. And if you're a student, do you think about whether you want a career in integrated marketing world or communications world, or to be a specialist in a particular area? Do you think experiential marketing is a siloed discipline, if you like, or is it really that's something that's more fundamental, and that there's been a cultural shift, which I know you talk about a lot, Shaz, in the way that people operate in the world and that they want these experiences in their lives? So I think that was very interesting. Thank you very much indeed. We do have a number of areas that we could open up for discussion, but I think before we even attempted to do that, I invite anyone to ask any questions about what Shaz has been saying, or indeed anyone else this morning.
Okay, go first. Okay. There's a question that always nags me, and that is the failure rate. For every great story we hear, how many exercises like this actually flog?
In terms of the failure of an integrated experiential marketing campaign, I haven't actually personally come across one. A failed live brand experience, I've seen several. I think, first of all, it is important to define failure, and I think really that comes very closely in terms of not maybe managing expectations effectively enough, in terms of, having an aligned vision in terms of the client's objectives. What will this experience achieve for me in my business? And maybe then the agency's ability to manage expectations on how deliverable those factors are. And also sometimes, external factors come into play in a live event sort of environment. So, for example, you've got experiences designed for an outdoor event, and then horrible rain, transport strikes, God knows what else can actually create disaster in an event circumstance. But I think that kind of level of failure we're talking about is probably more, the factors and external forces playing against events rather than maybe the integrated experiential marketing methodology, which is what we're focusing on today.
So if I could just go on. As more and more companies jump on the bandwagon, isn't there going to be a problem of consumers being more selective? It's going to be more difficult to pull it off, no? How far can one go in being an advocate,
What always kind of, never actually ceases to amaze me is how excited consumers genuinely are to have an added value experience in this kind of day and age where nothing is free. And we're brought up on the idea that you don't get anything for free. When you get an experience, whether it be free or not, when you get that added value experience curated for you by a brand that is relevant for you, an experience that is relevant for you, the actual reaction from the consumer is amazing. And I don't think that one brand experience is comparable to another. So it's not kind of something that I think would reach a saturation point. There might be, over a long period of time, a kind of complacency about, expectations being raised, in terms of being maybe a spoilt consumer. But I think we're so far away from that point. We're actually, consumers are just currently being kind of used and bombarded for the most part. So we're at a very early point in terms of that shift. Yeah.
I've got 3 questions. First of all, you talked about data capture. How do you do that? I mean, technically, how are you collecting that data?
Well, it will vary based on what the experience actually is. What, you know, if it's an event, if it's face-to-face, remote, etc. I mean, for example, if you have a brand experience that people sign up to in advance that has pre-activity, you can sign up through digital channels and you've instantly got data capture there. Whether it be the iTunes Festival, you know, you book tickets and there you've got the data. On the other hand, if it's a more impromptu kind of set it up, you know, in a high footfall location and hope people walk past kind of a situation with a live brand experience event, you can integrate, for example, a mechanic where you need a wristband to enter or participate. In order to get that wristband, you go to the person with the iPad, fill out the data capture form, get your wristband, for example. And we've often had, you know, massive queues of people waiting for their wristbands and therefore hence waiting to give their data, you know, which is a nice situation to have.
But do they know that they're giving their data for marketing purposes?
Yeah, obviously, you know, opt-in boxes and all that kind of thing. And then also in terms of social media amplification, we do a lot of kind of photo mechanics in terms of social media. So people have their photos taken at a live brand experience, they go onto Facebook to access them, and then they share them for a kind of a voting competition. So if you vote, for example, we did an event with an experience with JD Sports where we built an app that was at the core of the integrated campaign that was called Be the Face of JD, and it offered people the opportunity to actually upload photographs or be scouted in the street or at an event to be the next face of JD. People then voted for those photographs, so the voters had their data captured via the Facebook mechanic of allowing the app. So Facebook says, you know, by allowing the app, you're giving us your email address, your user ID, you tick the opt-in boxes. So, you know, those are people who actually didn't participate in the live brand experience face-to-face, but actually participated in the amplification online. So, I mean, and there's other ways as well, yeah.
Okay, and Facebook shares that data with you?
Yeah, that data goes into a database that you have as a brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question was about the when you're doing these campaigns where you're evolving the storyline and you're changing it and so on and so forth, especially in areas like alcohol where it's very heavily regulated. How do you keep on top of the fact that you're actually keeping within the codes of practice when you're doing this really, I mean, it's very exciting and live kind of.
Well, nothing in that respect is truly live to the fullest extent. I mean, you have people moderating content, you know, every step of the way. I mean, you know, even with the Face of JD campaign I just mentioned, I mean, we had some hilarious entries. You know, there was someone who put their name in as Uncle Ben, and he was in the photo. He had a massive bag of Uncle Ben's rice, and he was pointing at it in the photo. And it was just at the same time that the riots had just happened, and there was a whole bunch of kind of, you know, Facebook spoofs going around of people stealing random everyday ingredients from supermarkets. So, you know, it was kind of a comical entry, but, you know, we were sharing around the office, you know, all the ones that didn't get through because there were lots of dodgy entry. I mean, you know, you always have mechanics. Anything that's an event or an experience, the actual volume of contingency planning and logistical planning and, you know, everything, the detail that has to go into an effective execution is really just immense. I mean, I could talk all day. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one. Well, this thing about brand evangelists really interests me. As it happens, it is one of the subjects of my final graduation paper. So how do you make a difference between brand evangelists and brand ambassadors? Could it be that some of them, well, brand evangelists are not employed by the company but given an experience and they share it willingly, and the brand ambassadors might be paid for doing it?
Pretty much, yeah, that's a pretty accurate description. I mean, the term brand ambassador is used in different ways. So, for example, we often use it at Blazinstar to mean the kind of personnel employed, you know, to work on the live brand experience, so like, you know, what you may previously have called the promotional staff, for example. But also, you know, brand ambassadors are celebrity ambassadors employed by brands to become, you know, icons and spokespersonnel for that brand. And in addition to that, you know, there's an emergence of what's called a tremor panel, which is basically consumer engagement programs designed where consumers actually contribute to R&D initiatives, marketing ideas, etc. And it's kind of an advocacy program. Those people who are, you know, participants of that program, they're maybe not remunerated financially, but they are, you know, considered brand ambassadors as well. So it's a formal program and it is an exchange, while being a brand advocate or a brand evangelist at the highest level is really a result of a feeling, I think, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have just one question. Don't you think that at one point people will just get tired of all these experiences and taking part and voting? I mean, we already have this, it's a little bit what you already mentioned, this overload of information, and I think at some point it will not pay off for brands anymore.
Well, I do feel
now
we
have, a medium to have some sort of unique position with such an experience like the flash mob or whatever. But I think this will be less.
I do think that we covered that a bit already, but to elaborate slightly further, you know, cultural properties, you know, that are relevant for people are always relevant, and so, you know, experiences are life. In the sense, you know, that is life, and people ultimately who are, you know, we live in a consumer society, we'll always consume brands, and we have relationships with our favourite brands. So, you know, as with a human relationship, you'll never get sick of having communication with your friends, your family, you know, those who you love, you want communication with, and you know, you want an experience that's relevant for you. So rather than paying to go to the theatre or paying to go to an art gallery, you know, if your brand that you already have a relationship with you invites you as a valued customer to attend something that you would have ultimately wanted to attend anyway as an event, you know, it's not the kind of thing that, in my opinion, really lends itself to clutter, but rather just to forming a part of your life like everything else that you do.
So that means that our lives in the future are going to be basically, our experiences will be brand driven.
A lot of our experiences, you know, are not to do with consuming entertainment, education, or information, but those specific areas, you know, entertainment, education, information, you know, those are areas that lend themselves to brand experiences. And actually, it's something that, you know, is a very organic, nice shift. It's not secretive. It's, you know, it's something that the consumer will still always have to opt into. And I think that's what's quite beautiful about it. It doesn't bombard the consumer in an interruptive way. It's something that really is a choice.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Well, I think consumers are becoming increasingly marketing savvy, and they understand the transaction you have, the emotional transaction, how advertisers or brands now have to earn their attention by entertaining them and enriching them. So the choice is still with them whether to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And the onus then comes on to us to make sure that what we're delivering tempts them into what we're doing and makes them pay attention.
Exactly.
And the definition of success and failure, therefore, will probably evolve, because it is still going to be a personalised choice, and you know, you don't have to engage in a live event if you don't want to. Yeah. So it might be that there are less people who are going to genuinely engage in, if there are so many events and experiences out there, and if there's so much social amplification of that, then perhaps the ROI on that particular strategy will become less. I don't know. I think that's why I was saying earlier, it'll be interesting to see how the trend and the cultural shift evolves.
Yeah, but it's also, as I mentioned about, you know, cultural properties, Formula One, you know, if you're a Formula One fan and you can now go and see Formula, you know, it's always quite specific, isn't it? You know, it's to a specific area of interest, a specific consumer group. So to imagine that there'd be clutter in any one given cultural property and consumer segment is quite, I don't believe that would happen.
Sorry, you had a point just at the back there first.
Only to perhaps we're doing it to death, but you refer to it as the savvy consumer, but never the cynical. When it's studied, never the cynical consumer. When social marketing is employed, and social media rather is employed for an experience like this, is it ever when it's in a study, do we find that people using social media ever find brands and consumerism, if you like, invasive to that experience? I mean, you know, if you're a Facebook user and you have groups you're into regarding music and stuff, family and friends, do you ever find that, you know, if there's anything targeted towards a particular alcohol product or anything like that, because of a music interest, that do you ever find that when it's studied that that's taking things too far, and that's an ad you want to close or an experience you just don't want, and you're sort of shutting things down?
I think it's really important to just reinforce the fact that it is these things are opt-in. It's the consumer must seek out participation. It's not like advertising in a traditional sense where, you know, you're doing something that you would be doing, you're going through your daily life and something interrupts you that you have to shut out. It's an active decision to participate, you know, seeking out something. I'll actually fill in my data because I want to do something, or I will like that page because I want to participate in that social interaction. You know, it is an opt-in process, and therefore I wouldn't say that that's the case.
Yeah.
And you can opt out. You know, you change your mind as well. Fair enough.
I guess. It's just you occasionally get you know, I'm sure we've all seen it, where you will close something and it will ask you why you closed it. Please tell us. You know.
But do you ever?
Well, and one of those should be that you're in my face.
Yeah, no, it's a valid point. It's a valid point. And different people will have different views.
You talk very convincingly about the success of the engagement of the consumer in the campaigns, but how does that result in terms of sales?
Well, I think definitely brands that have invested in this area in a major way, you know, a lot of the brands in the States, they really invest a huge portion of their overall budget into these strategies, if not their entire budget. And it's absolutely unparalleled in terms of the graphs, the sales graphs, they actually look like that. You know, it's like it's an enormous uplift that you see over a long, sustainable period of time. I mean, even yesterday I was in Paris working with L'Oreal, and you know, we're looking at their consumer experience strategy globally, and what they've already been doing for some of the particular fragrance brands that we were talking about on the luxury side is, you know, having an experience-driven approach to their point of sale experiences, and you know, their entire consumer experience across every single touch point. So not just experiential marketing, but actually, you know, every consumer experience, every opportunity that consumer has to have an interaction with that brand is an added value experience. And what that's done to their sales, despite not advertising on TV for that brand whatsoever, is placed them third in the US market for fragrances, despite being more expensive than their rivals such as Chanel No. 5, etc. You know, the highest kind of perceived brands being third above and beyond those other brands. But they also have distribution by choice in only a third of distribution outlets. So selective distribution combined with added value experience at point of sale, you know, has actually generated an enormous business result for them. So, you know, there's countless data that we have at our fingertips that shows that.
Okay, Joanna's giving me the signal. I know John had a question. As the president, it would seem harsh not to allow you to ask a question. So
I just
maybe
wanted to tip the balance a bit, really, and ask about not-for-profit. You know, with great stories about experiences selling crap to consumers. You know, what about not-for-profit? Because I know certainly for organisations like Greenpeace, Surfrider Foundation over in the States, Surfers Against Sewage here in the UK, are doing great experiential work. But we don't get to hear about it.
Well, if you look at cancer research and Race for Life, amongst other initiatives, you know, you see really high-profile, you know, campaigns that do place brand experience at the core. And I think maybe some of the brands that you talk about, rather than leveraging with, say, TV advertising, you know, Greenpeace will leverage with PR, because obviously being a more cost-effective channel for awareness, they'll use that to expand the reach, along with, for example, social media. You know, today we've really focused on the use of TV advertising because it's the channel that generates the most fame for a brand experience, and you know, it's also a very good way of noting the shift from the traditional advertising and marketing model towards this kind of new era of this integrated experiential marketing methodology. But absolutely, I mean, there are many examples that are very interesting.
So on that sort of note, just to finish off, smart TV, do you see that as...
It's very interesting you say that, actually, yeah, because I had a list of potential discussion points, but we've all had so much to talk about, we haven't got to them. But one of my points, actually, which I think is very interesting, is what will smart TV do to all of this, on two levels. One being the fact that, the opportunity to expand the reach of this content digitally is going to be enormous. The opportunity to actually create a TV channel, the barrier to entry to create a TV channel is going to be minimal. And obviously, the potential effect that smart TV will have on traditional TV advertising, due to the opt-in model. So, yeah, I mean, it's time will tell, but it's definitely an interesting question.